Hello everyone. In this lesson, we start making a game. To begin, we'll create a new scene, import a character into the project, add a road, configure materials on all objects, and set the camera angle. In any game, a lot of things happen. You don't always know what to do first. I usually start working on a game by creating a scene and choosing a camera angle. That way, you immediately see what the game will look like. Let me explain some of the terms that I will be using in this video. We will create materials. A material is a file in which you configure color, texture, glare, and other surface properties. The material is then applied to different 3D objects in the scene. Another thing we will work with is the camera. The camera is the player's point of view. Any scene in any game must have at least one camera. By moving the camera, you change the angle from which the game is visible. Let's start by creating a new scene. There is a scenes folder in the project window here, and now we are working in this scene, in this file. You can right-click and select Create Scene. Let's call this scene level 1. You can switch between different scenes. Double-click it, then click Save to save the old scene, and go to this one. This is the one we worked in before this. And this is the new scene. Let's start by putting the road and the character into the game, and configuring how they will be positioned in relation to each other. I've attached the files you will need for this lesson under this video. Drag the entire folder into the project, for example, into the Assets folder. There is a character model, a coin model, and several textures. You can take the man.fbx character file. It looks like this. Now move it to the project. There are two ways to place a model in the scene. One is like this, anywhere in the scene window. The other is to move it to the hierarchy window. It will then be set to its standard position. Let's move it to 0 coordinates, position 0, 0, 0. You may notice that these arrows are rather strangely located. It seems that we have 0 coordinates here, but the wireframe is here, the floor is here, and for some reason the arrow is at the top. Unity features this center and pivot switch in the scene window. It needs to be switched to pivot. In the center mode, it displays the center of the whole model, which isn't really useful. Usually, what you want to see in the scene window is its location, its coordinates. This is particularly important when working with scripts. Now let's create a road along which it will run, and name it ground. It's just a box going into the distance, a 3D object, a cube. We will subsequently have a lot of objects in the scene, so it's better to name everything right away to make it easier to navigate. I will also move it to the position 0, 0, 0 and flatten it vertically. I usually like to do such things accurately, so I'll give it a scale of 0, 0.2 along the y-axis. I also want the floor surface to be at 0 level, so that the object doesn't look like it's under the floor. I'll give it a minus 0.1 position. That's it. The y-axis is directed upwards, it's the vertical axis. Let's expand it like this. On the x-axis, I'll make a scale of 6 and on the z-scale, something like 100, such a long road. And let's expand it further so that it goes far away. I just pressed Shift plus space to make the window expand to full screen. By the way, you can use either a scale for transformation, or this rect tool. It is more convenient. You can grab and pull the object in one direction if we decide the road should be even longer. Let's place the camera as well. Here, I select the camera. Later, when we start playing around, we will adjust it again, but it should be positioned approximately like this. When setting the camera, it is very important to remember what screen orientation the device should have. You are adapting to the phone or to the computer the screen on which it will generally be displayed. The screen here is stretchable. It can be either this or that. But if you want to look at a specific device, you can choose one of the options here, for example, 16:9. This is what it will look like on a full HD monitor. We can also add our permissions here. For example, if I want to see how it will look with a vertical orientation, I add a new one here. Here we choose the aspect ratio, the ratio of the sides. For example, 9:16. This is a standard vertical phone. Click OK, and this permission will become available to you. You can see what it looks like, and then switch to the free aspect and look at it differently. Different phones have different resolutions, and the game must look good on all of them. By moving this window, you can see how it looks on different devices. This angle looks pretty good to me. Now, let's configure our materials. I'll create a new materials folder in the assets folder, and create a material for the character inside it. I'll name it player and drag it to the player. The material from the FBX file is located on the player, but we'll just reassign it. Now, let's talk a little bit about the material settings. This is the most standard material in Unity. What we can change in it is the color. I'll make it bright yellow. Then there is brilliance. This is how metallic or reflective the surface is. The second parameter, smoothness, is the reflection blur. If it completely reflects and doesn't blur anything, then it will be a mirror. Adjust to your taste. I basically like something like this. You can also configure emission, it's a kind of glow. I want everything to be cartoonish and bright, so let it be even brighter than the way a light source illuminates it now, like this, for example. Now I'll configure the road material. Create material. Let's name it road. And place it right on the road. Here I want to use this texture with arrows. There's a texture like this in the folder I attached under the video. It needs to be dragged into the base map field. We can still throw maps to different parameters. Now, by the way, this texture is just stretched 1 over the entire surface of the box. So that you can better understand what is happening now, if I drag the same material to another box, that's what it looks like, stretched like that. I want there to be a lot of arrows like this. You can change the tiling parameter. This is how the texture will be repeated. If you set something like 80, it already looks good, but I want to place the arrows in the other direction, so -80. You can also change the reflection parameters to your taste. You can make the road brighter. You can change the emission a little bit. You can give a little shade to this texture, but make it bluer. You can set the base color too. By multiplying the color of the texture by the color, you give it a shade as well. Not bad. The road and the character. Let's do some more background work. This standard Unity background is now somehow very boring and looks bad. Here I have a gradient for the sky. We also need to create a new material named sky. Where does the sky go anyway? It seems that we have a sky in the background, but there is no sky in the hierarchy window. Go to Window, Rendering, Lighting. This window has opened. It is usually convenient to attach it somewhere on the right and let it be present on the screen. There is such a slot here in the Environment tab. This is exactly the sky that we have now displayed on the screen. I'll drag our sky material there, but it doesn't work right now. An explanation comes out that this shader is not suitable for rendering the sky. This means that for the sky, this kind of material in which we configure all these highlights and stuff is not suitable, and it should be noted here that the material also has a shader. It is selected right here at the top. There are different shaders for different tasks and for the sky. This skybox is suitable for us. There are several shaders for the sky. For example, procedural. In it, you can configure all sorts of things like atmosphere thickness, ground. You might be able to achieve something interesting with the help of such a shader. It is more realistic, and you can choose skybox/panoramic. Here we can apply any texture of our own, and it will stretch all over the sphere around the stage like this. I placed this sky gradient into the folder. Let's place it here, and here it is actually around the entire scene right now. I like to create gradients. In Photoshop, you can configure it in different ways and you have full control over what it looks like in the end. You can change the brightness here, the tone as well. I'll leave everything like that. I think it's more or less clear that the shader is like a certain set of parameters that determine exactly how this material will be visualized. A special sky shader is needed for the sky, only it seems to fit there. Now we have no errors in the lighting tab here, everything is fine. I don't like how this sky is illuminating our character a lot. Now it performs several functions. It is in the background, it illuminates, and this sky is also in the reflections. Environment lighting source is what will illuminate the scene. Go to Choose Color now, and choose the color that lights the stage. Let's use this one. You can also configure the reflection. Right now our character has a rather lackluster reflection of only the blue sky. I'll switch the mode to shaded so that the wireframe is no longer visible. You can choose custom environment reflections and place a certain texture that you want to see on the reflections. I've attached several textures for you to choose from. There is one more detail here. There's an error message here. Basically, you can't place these textures here. We need to make some adjustments. We select all these textures, and their properties are displayed in the Inspector tab. Select the texture shape, cube, and click Apply. When we select files in the project, import properties are displayed here on the right of the inspector. This is how these files will get into Unity. We have now set Unity to perceive these textures not just as flat pictures, but as something that is stretched over the cube. That is located outside the scene. For this kind of map, you need to select it and click Apply to apply the changes. Then we go back to lighting, place a map here, and see that it is reflected in the character. Here you can choose which one you like best. There will be some very colorful reflections here. I'll probably leave this option. With another reflection map, with different lighting, our material already looks different, so you can periodically change it a little. Finally, let's configure the fog in the scene. It ticks me off that there's a red error in the console. You can click Clear here, let's not bother with it. In the Lighting tab, you can also configure the fog. I want the fog to be displayed. Check the fog box in Other Settings. Everything has turned blue because Unity is in the process of recalculating the shaders with the fog taken into account. You just have to wait a little while. You can configure the color of the fog. White. Also, its intensity. Here's what it looks like. By the way, the fog doesn't apply to the background, it only works for 3D objects. And you can also choose its density type exponential or linear. Linear is more convenient to configure. You indicate where it starts and where it ends. I know that we have a road of about 200 meters. Let the end be something like 200 or 150. And the start somewhere in the beginning. There will also be a cool effect if you click somewhere here with this pipette. Our road sort of goes into the fog. The fog has the same color as the background, and it will just dissolve smoothly into the horizon, into the unknown. I think it's a suitable effect for this situation. That's basically it. Remove the extra objects from the scene. If you are attentive, you may notice that the gradient is slightly compressed. I suggest that you do the following. Select the gradient file of the sky, and change the compression parameters in the inspector. By default, Unity compresses all textures so that they weigh less and work faster, but it is better to select None Compression and click Play, then it will be beautiful and smooth. The scene is ready. This picture already gives some understanding of what will happen in the game. To sum up, one material can be applied to several objects. Materials can have different shaders. We usually use the Universal Pipeline/Lit shader, but for the sky, for example, the Skybox/Panoramic shader is used. When choosing the angles, think about the orientation of the screen, whether it is horizontal or vertical, and what dimensions it will have. For beginners, I advise you to copy the angle from a popular game. In this lesson, we selected the angle, size, colors, and direction of the light source. All of this can certainly be further improved, corrected when the final gameplay is ready and all objects are present on the screen.